The judge looked down confused. The lawyers turned in disbelief. But the little boy stood tall, pointed to his shackled father, and said, "I am my father's lawyer." What happened next shook the entire courtroom and exposed a truth no one dared speak aloud. The courtroom had never been this quiet. Even the air itself seemed afraid to move. Cameras were set up at every corner because this case had made national headlines. An African-American man named Marcus Bell, a former mechanic from Detroit, was on trial for a crime that nobody could quite believe he committed: grand larceny, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. But what made this case different wasn't just the charges. It was the fact that Marcus had refused all legal representation. Everyone assumed he was going to lose. The prosecution smelled blood. The media portrayed him as a nobody trying to pull a stunt. And the jury, well, their expressions were already tired. But then it happened. As the judge called the next session to order, the doors to the courtroom creaked open slowly. A small black boy, no older than 10, entered the room wearing a suit 2 sizes too big. His eyes were sharp, focused, and unnervingly calm. The judge squinted. "Who let this child in?" he barked. Murmurs rippled through the room. The boy stepped forward, placed a file on the defense table, and spoke clearly into the mic. "Your Honor, my name is Elijah Bell. I'm my father's lawyer." The entire room erupted. Laughter, confusion, outrage. The opposing counsel stood up, demanding the judge remove the disruption. But the judge, curious and visibly shaken, asked the boy to explain. Elijah opened his mouth and began speaking in fluent legalese terms, statutes, case law, things no child should know. Everyone stared. And in that moment, the courtroom no longer saw a boy. They saw a fire that refused to be extinguished. And just like that, something shifted. Elijah wasn't there to play. He was there to win. Asterisk. The judge took a deep breath and allowed Elijah to present his motion. His hands trembled only slightly as he opened a tattered briefcase and pulled out a meticulously organized stack of documents, including surveillance footage, phone records, and emails, all of which pointed to a stunning truth. His father was being framed. Elijah pointed toward the DA's bench and spoke. "My father fixed the wrong man's car. He didn't know it belonged to Councilman Darren Wexler, who was laundering millions through a shell corporation. My dad found a USB under the seat. He didn't know what it was. But when he plugged it in and saw the data, he tried to hand it over to the police. That's when everything went wrong." The judge leaned forward. This wasn't just a child telling bedtime stories. Every document Elijah presented was real, verified, dated, time-stamped. The boy had cross-referenced every public record and matched them to forensic evidence that Marcus's public defenders never even bothered to review. Reporters scrambled to live tweet, and the jury began to lean in. But then the prosecution struck back. "This is unethical. A child can't represent anyone," the lead prosecutor, Michelle Thorne, shouted. But Elijah had anticipated that too. He calmly cited a rare but valid clause in Michigan law allowing for a pro se proxy in cases of extraordinary circumstance when the defendant waives representation, especially if the court fails to provide competent legal defense. The judge ordered a recess, and as Elijah walked out of the courtroom with cameras flashing, he whispered to a nearby guard, "They're going to try to shut us down now. But I'm not stopping." What the world didn't know yet was that Elijah had been preparing for this moment for 2 years, ever since his father was arrested. He read law books at night, watched trials online, memorized procedures, and practiced closing arguments in front of a mirror, not because he wanted to be a lawyer, but because he had to be. Asterisk. When court resumed 3 days later, Elijah walked in with something even more shocking, a witness no one had ever seen before. She was a frail woman with burn scars on her arms and fear in her eyes. Elijah announced, "This is Nurse Latoya Ricks. She used to work at St. Joseph's Hospital, where Councilman Wexler secretly met his offshore contact under a fake patient identity. She saw the drop, recorded it, and was fired the next day. The court was in disbelief. Thorne, the prosecutor, objected aggressively, but the judge, now thoroughly suspicious of the official narrative, overruled. Nurse Ricks played a recording taken from her phone. In it, Wexler's voice could clearly be heard instructing a man to clean up the mechanic who'd seen too much. The courtroom gasped. Elijah didn't flinch. He looked directly at the jury. This is why my dad's behind bars. Not because he stole anything, but because he stumbled on a truth too powerful to hide. Then came the blow that shook the entire city. Elijah played security camera footage from a toll booth, showing Marcus being arrested at a different location than what the official police report claimed. The timestamp proved that the DA's timeline was a lie. At that point, even Thorne's own assistant started backing away. During a recess, Elijah received a note from someone anonymous. It read, "Stop this. You're a child. You don't understand what you're getting into." But Elijah crumpled it. He was no longer afraid. His closing argument stunned even veteran lawyers. "Your Honor, members of the jury, I may be a boy. I may not wear a fancy tie. But the truth doesn't care how old I am. It only wants to be heard. My father is not a criminal. He's a father who loved me enough to teach me to stand when others kneel. And now I'm standing for him." The courtroom fell silent. And this time, it wasn't disbelief. It was respect. Asterisk on the final day of trial, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up and declared, "We find the defendant, Marcus Bell, not guilty on all counts." The courtroom exploded. Reporters cried. The judge smiled for the first time. But the moment that truly broke everyone came when Marcus walked over to his son, dropped to his knees, and hugged him so tight the microphones picked up his tears. "You saved me, son. You saved me." Elijah whispered, "No, Daddy, you saved me first." Outside the courthouse, a massive crowd had gathered. Protesters turned into believers, skeptics into supporters. Elijah was offered scholarships, internships, and even honorary recognition by Harvard Law. But he refused all of it for now. "I'm just a kid," he told the press. "But there are more kids like me, ones who don't have a voice. That's who I want to fight for." The story of Elijah Bell flooded national news. Activists praised him. Politicians panicked. And Councilman Wexler? He was arrested within weeks when the FBI opened an investigation based on the evidence Elijah had exposed. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Elijah returned to school. His classmates gave him a standing ovation. His teacher cried. And the principal, who once mocked his wild dreams, handed him a new briefcase. "You taught us all what justice really looks like." Elijah didn't respond. He just smiled and whispered, "This is only the beginning." Months later, he started a youth legal literacy club called Small Voice, Big Truth, aimed at teaching kids from underprivileged backgrounds about their rights. His story was turned into a documentary, but he remained humble. "I'm not special," he said in one interview. "I just refuse to give up on someone I love." And maybe, just maybe, that's what made him the most powerful voice in the room, even when he was the smallest. Asterisk. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let Elijah's voice reach every corner of the world. Because the truth doesn't whisper, it roars. Subscribe now to Twistline Tales for more powerful, jaw-dropping stories that challenge everything you thought you knew. Asterisk.